fund of $100 billion?
Yes.
Now that would be the biggest fund ever raised. So when you told people you were going to raise a $100 billion fund, did they tell you you were a little crazy?
Well, some people said.
Masa's son was once the richest man in the world for 3 whole days, and then he lost about $70 billion almost overnight. The biggest personal loss in history, he once managed to secure $45 billion worth of funding after a 45-minute meeting.
$1 billion per minute.
He's also responsible for the single greatest investment ever made. But on the other hand, many feel he's simply a crazy gambler who treats the economy like a casino, and that he's causing catastrophic damage. This is a man who once threatened to set himself on fire if he didn't get a business deal. A man who's invested billions of dollars in entrepreneurs purely based on the sparkle in their eyes. He is quite literally changing the world and betting on our future, and his story is one of the most fascinating I've ever heard. It's inspiring, it's terrifying, and most of all, it's absolutely insane.
Is he the world's most astute tech investor, or is he the luckiest guy on the planet?
It was 6 a.m. in Tokyo when Masayoshi Son woke to silence. No alarms, no calls, just the faint hum of a city unaware that in the next few hours one man's fortune, $35 billion, would vanish. Outside, the markets were trembling. The dot-com dream was fracturing. Screens flickered red in trading rooms from New York to Osaka. And somewhere inside SoftBank's glass tower, the man once richer than Bill Gates watched numbers collapse faster than he could refresh them. Billion after billion dissolved like vapor, leaving behind nothing but disbelief. But this wasn't the story of a gambler losing his luck. It was the story of a visionary watching his future burn. Years earlier, he had been a boy from a poor Korean family in Japan, an outsider in every way. He grew up in a country that often reminded him he didn't fully belong. But he wasn't obsessed with money. He was obsessed with possibility. He devoured books about science, technology, and invention. He saw machines as tools of destiny, bridges between dreamers and the future. When other kids played baseball, he drew circuit diagrams. At 16, he moved to California, chasing a new kind of dream. He barely spoke English, but he carried an idea that would define his life. Technology is destiny. At Berkeley, he invented a pocket translator, a tiny device that could turn spoken Japanese into English. He sold it for $1 million. That was his first taste of what innovation could do. And he whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." In 1981, inside a cramped Tokyo apartment, Masayoshi Son founded a company with a name that sounded too big for what it was: SoftBank. At the time, it wasn't a bank. It wasn't even soft. It was just Son, a desk, and a belief that the world would soon run on software. Computers were still strange, foreign things in Japan. Most people thought the internet was a passing fad. But Son saw a revolution waiting beneath the surface. He started by distributing software, tiny disks of code that nobody else cared to sell. But Son didn't see them as products. He saw them as seeds. In interviews, he often said, "I don't invest in companies. I invest in dreams." Every deal, every partnership was part of a single, unstoppable vision: to connect the world through technology. By the 1990s, SoftBank had become the beating heart of Japan's tech scene. Son had the energy of a storm, speaking fast, thinking faster. His eyes burned with the same light as Silicon Valley's young billionaires. He bet big on the internet before the rest of the world even knew what it was. Yahoo, E-T-R-A-D-E, Ziff Davis, GeoCities. Each one a puzzle piece in Son's vision of a digital future. When others hesitated, he doubled down. And one day, in 1999, a young Chinese teacher named Jack Ma walked into his life. Ma came to Japan seeking investors for a tiny company called Alibaba. Most investors laughed. No profits, no clear plan, just a few people in a small apartment in Hangzhou. But Son didn't see what they saw. He saw the same fire, the same madness that had once lived inside him. He wrote a $20 million check on the spot. No due diligence, no paperwork, just a handshake and a gut feeling. I could feel it in his eyes, Son said later. I knew he would be big. By 1999, the world had gone mad for the internet. Stock charts looked like rocket launches. Venture capital poured into anything ending with .com. And at the center of it all, Masayoshi Son. SoftBank owned pieces of hundreds of internet companies, each one rising faster than the last. Son's net worth soared past $78 billion, making him briefly richer than Bill Gates. The media crowned him the Japanese Steve Jobs. He gave interviews surrounded by glowing monitors, speaking of a world transformed by data and connection. He wasn't shy about his ambition. He told audiences he could see 100 years ahead. He said he would build a new civilization powered by software. And for a moment, it looked like he might actually do it. But behind the confidence lay a dangerous truth. SoftBank's empire was built not on cash, but on paper. Stock value, hype, belief. And belief, like markets, can shatter in a single day. March 2000. The bubble burst. In the space of weeks, the dot-com dream collapsed under its own weight. Companies vanished overnight. Billions evaporated. SoftBank's valuation imploded. Investors panicked. Analysts turned cold. $35 billion. Gone before lunch. The headlines were brutal. SoftBank's empire crumbles. The man who flew too close to the sun. From richest to ruined. In Tokyo, Son sat in silence as screens filled with red. Every company he'd built, every investment he'd made, was being erased line by line. Most men would have broken, but not him. He told reporters quietly but firmly, "I have not lost my conviction, only my paper wealth." While others ran from the ashes of the internet, Masayoshi Son stayed, watching, waiting, planning. Years passed. The world moved on. The internet survivors, Amazon, eBay, Google, began to rebuild a digital world from the ruins. And buried among Son's old bets was one that everyone had forgotten: Alibaba. Jack Ma's company had survived. Then it thrived. Then it exploded. When Alibaba went public, Son's $20 million stake turned into nearly $50 billion, the largest single investment return in history. SoftBank, once mocked as a relic of the bubble, was suddenly back, and bigger than ever. Reporters returned, this time calling him a genius again. But Son didn't gloat. He just smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. The kind that says, "I told you so," without words. For most people, that would have been the end, a comeback story for the ages. But for Masayoshi Son, it was only another beginning. He announced a new plan, something even more ambitious, even more impossible. The Vision Fund. $100 billion. The largest tech fund in human history. Backed by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund and global giants like Apple, it became a financial superweapon. Son poured billions into startups that promised to shape the next century. Uber, WeWork, ARM, DoorDash, Slack, ByteDance. His pitch was simple. The future belonged to those crazy enough to believe. He spoke of artificial intelligence, automation, and a coming singularity where machines would outthink humans. He wanted to accelerate that future, to build it himself. And once again, the world was split. Some called him a prophet, others a gambler who never learned. Then came 2019. WeWork, one of Son's crown jewels, imploded. Its valuation collapsed from $47 billion to almost nothing. The Vision Fund lost billions. Then 2020, a global pandemic. Markets crashed again. SoftBank's shares nosedived. Critics resurfaced like vultures. Son never learns. He's addicted to risk. He's chasing ghosts. But those who knew him understood. This was the same Masayoshi Son who'd been here before. The man who'd lost $35 billion in a day. He didn't panic. He went quiet. He recalibrated. And when markets rebounded, SoftBank rebounded too, faster than almost anyone else. He called it the second dawn. Now, in his 60s, Son speaks less but dreams more. In his Tokyo office, surrounded by robot prototypes, humanoids, and AI models, he talks softly about the singularity. The day machines surpass human intelligence. To some, it sounds like fantasy. To others, prophecy. He often says, "I want to be the architect of the future, not a witness to it." The boy who once sold a pocket translator for $1 million now commands empires of data, energy, and intelligence. He's seen both the summit and the abyss. The man who lost $35 billion in a day still bets everything on tomorrow. And as the city sleeps, the glow of his monitors reflects in his eyes, steady, unshaken, daring the world to doubt him again. Because for Masayoshi Son, wealth was never the goal. It was always the proof. That vision, when pursued without fear, can bend reality itself. The skyline hums with light. SoftBank's tower stands silent against the stars. And inside, one man still plans, still dreams, as if the future were a blank page, waiting for him to write it. Because the story of Masayoshi Son isn't about what he lost. It's about what he never stopped believing. That no matter how many empires fall, the next great one is already being built. In the mind of someone who refuses to give up.